Hey, how's it, guys? I just wanted to make a quick video about this guy, our sports minister, Fikile Mbalula. I can't stand this guy. I really I find it very difficult to even listen to him speak. He just rubs me up the wrong way. And the problem with this thing is that this guy he's popular as hell. People seem to think that he is just the best minister we've ever had. Um, and he's got a huge Twitter following, and I understand he's very active on Twitter, and people just seem to love him for that. But I don't think people actually realize just how useless this guy is. He's incompetent, he's unqualified, he's not a good decision maker. I mean, if you look at the things that he does, it's beyond words. And the reason why I'm making this video um, is because I just caught a quick article here a couple of days ago about how he's now decided to give 700,000 Rand to Mamelodi Sundowns. Now, Mamelodi Sundowns does not need an extra 700,000 Rand, okay? That's the richest football club in South Africa at the moment, right? This team is owned by Patrice Motsepe, who is a flippant billionaire, right? He already gave them 20 million Rand to share amongst themselves, right? So that's about um, 800,000 Rand per person, if I'm not mistaken. And that's on top of the prize money that they got for winning the CAF Champions League. Now, I understand that we have to have a bit of national pride and we have to show our appreciation for the fact that they went out into Africa and did pretty well. That's all good and well, that's great. But they do not deserve an extra 700,000 Rand, particularly 700,000 Rand that comes from the taxpayer. And this is part of the problem with guys like Fikile Mbalula and people in the ANC in general. And this video is certainly not to knock the ANC. There'll be other times for that. But the general attitude of people within this party is that taxpayer money can be used any which way that they like. And this is very problematic because when you look at the state of the nation and you look at specifically the state of South African sport, which is what this video is about, it's in a terrible state. It's in a terrible state. And this guy is supposed to be leading from the front and trying to transform this thing. And the 700,000 story, it just really got up my nose because I happen to be a sportsman and someone who's been involved in sports for a long time. So I understand the plight of a lot of sportsmen in this country that just don't get the support that they need. And this guy, he's not doing a good job. But the fact that he's so popular, it just really boggles the mind. The fact that because someone has a Twitter following and happens to give a couple of snapbacks now and then and talk to people in a certain way, which I don't think is becoming of a minister. But the fact that someone has a Twitter following, it does not mean that they make a good minister. And this guy, he keeps on proving me right every single year with the actions and the decisions that he takes. So if we go back a couple of years, I mean, if you go back to around 2014 when he came into that position, this guy spent, I think, something around 110 million Rand on sports awards, right? Just on entertainment and sports awards. And if you look at the entire Olympic budget over that period of time, it was about 25 million Rand. 25 million Rand. No wonder, no wonder over that period of time, no wonder our sports people didn't do that well. You look at Swimming South Africa. Things have gotten better for Swimming South Africa, but that's because of their own hard work. Swimming South Africa was broken. They were bankrupt, right? They had to have swimming meetings in pools that were literally green because they were getting no support from government. You look at Boxing South Africa. Boxing South Africa was one of the most corrupt and broken sports organizations in this country. And you have to remember, South Africa has a very proud and long, illustrious boxing history, and it's been broken for a long time. And when Mbalula came in, there was a lot of hope that this guy would turn things around because he's a big talker. I mean, he came in with all kinds of promises, but I guess we should expect that from the current league of politicians. All they know how to do is talk big and make big promises. But this guy just takes the cake. He made the biggest promises, and he came in and everyone thought he was going to fix everything, and things just carried on getting worse. Boxing South Africa, even today, it's not as broken and as bankrupt as it used to be, but it's still in pretty bad shape, and he is presiding over it and doing absolutely nothing about it. You look at, Cricket South Africa. I mean, there was a complete meltdown a couple of years ago with Cricket South Africa and their relationship with the International Cricket Council and India. Things were very, very bad. The Soweto Marathon completely collapsed. Completely collapsed. What did Mbalula do about it? He did nothing. Rowing South Africa, right? You're talking about an organization that's produced Olympic medalists having to basically rent out boats, second-hand, old, broken down boats out of their own pockets in order for their people to compete. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's chaotic. I'm not even talking about all the other smaller sports, right? If you look at Athletics South Africa, probably one of the most shambolic organizations in this country. No support and no leadership coming in from Mbalula, and things just continue to deteriorate. Yet somehow he gets this popularity from all these people that just think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I can't understand it. I really, really, really cannot understand it. And if you look at decisions like this to give 700,000 rand of taxpayer money to people who don't need it, it just tells you everything you need to know. He's not up there in that position to do anything about South African sport. He's up there for himself. He's up there to improve his own popularity. He's looking at his own political future and trying to line that up so that one day, people will look back and say, oh, when he was sports minister, he was the most popular guy, so let's put him up, he might make a good president one day. That's what he's thinking in his head. He's not thinking about South African sport. He's not thinking about improving sporting codes in this country and supporting sportsmen and actually producing, some world class athletes in this country. That's not what he's thinking about. He's thinking about himself, and it irritates the absolute hell out of me. And as South Africans, we seem to be blinded by personalities. If I look at Julius, and it's not necessarily the same thing, but you look at a guy like Julius Malema, tons of personality, tons of charisma, and people hang on every single word that he says. And it's the same thing with Mbalula, and that seems to basically override everything else that he does, whether it be good or bad. If he happens to be performing in a mediocre way, nobody gives a damn because he's popular, right? He says all the right things, but the performance is complete rubbish. So for me, the amount of money that's being spent here is on things that are completely irrelevant and unnecessary is beyond insane. I mean, South African rugby, a prime example. He comes in a year ago with these big targets and, oh, we're going to make sure we get black people into rugby, and oh, we have to have representation. What are you doing about getting black people playing the sport? What are you doing about supporting black players that are already in the sport? What are you doing about getting them up to a level where they can compete without having to answer questions uh, about being token blacks? What are you doing to actually get them up to that level? What are you doing to increase the supply of black players? Not only into provincial rugby squads, but into club rugby, into all kinds of rugby structures that exist in this country. Doing absolutely nothing. Right? So he's the kind of guy that looks at what the situation is. Oh, there's very few black rugby players at the top level, and thinks we can then legislate an outcome. Coming in with quotas. It doesn't work like that. If there's a shortage of black rugby players, at high school level, at provincial level, at club level, Forget about trying to get national uh, or the right number of black players in the national side. It's not going to happen. But of course, the short-sighted idiot, he's not doing anything for actual development. He's doing it for his own personality and his own future. And so what does he do? He comes out with a uh, populist agenda, and he says, "Oh, look, we're going to put in place quotas so that there's more rugby players." It doesn't work like that. I mean, why aren't you getting the hundreds of black rugby coaches and black ex-rugby players to go out and coach in high schools and go out and coach in primary schools? Why don't you spend that money actually developing rugby at a grassroots level? And I could say the same thing about soccer, right? South African soccer slipped to I think 66th place in the world. Schools aren't playing that much soccer anymore, right? We're not getting the right kind of development happening at grassroots level. We're not getting primary school, high school, provincial level. We're not getting any of that happening because you've got a guy that's preoccupied with himself and spending money on things that are useless, sports awards and trips overseas and all kinds of nonsense. I mean, almost every major sporting event that happens involving a South African team, he's just got to be there. Whether it be the Springboks playing in Ireland or New Zealand or, Sundowns playing in Egypt or whatever it is, he's got to be there. But why? It's a waste of money. So South African sports, unfortunately, is going absolutely nowhere while we still got a guy like this in charge. And I hate the fact that he's so popular. And I wish South Africans would wake up and just realize that this guy is a complete loser. I mean, he called Bafana mediocre, and they were a bunch of losers a couple of years ago. He's the biggest loser. There is just no doubt about that. He is the biggest loser. South African sport is floundering. I haven't even begun to talk about some of the smaller sporting codes. I haven't even begun to talk about your judo. I haven't even begun to talk about water polo. I haven't begun to talk about, any of the smaller sports. They are completely floundering because we don't have any kind of support. This guy is useless, guys. This guy is an absolute clown. I'm not going to tell you not to support him, not to engage him, but there has to be better. There has to be better than this. This can't be the best that we have as far as sports goes. This just can't be it. Anyways, I'll be making future videos about the things that this guy does. I'm an avid sports fan. Um, and I think there's a huge amount of injustice that's happening in this country as far as our sporting goes. Um, so I'll definitely be making a few videos about that going forward. But yeah, have yourself a good night. I'm out of here.